All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on another edition of the Google Plus Hangout for Channel 3. I'm Victor Matthias, and today we're looking at Sit-Tightenism by African leaders. Of course, we heard what just happened, or we are all aware of what just happened to one of the African leaders who has spent almost, at least over 30 years, between 35 to 37 years, either as president or prime minister. Well, joining us today to look at this, we have Bede Chukwuekezie, who joins us from the UK. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And we have Bamshai Victor, who joins us from Lviv in Ukraine. Victor, thanks as well for coming on board.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's begin with a general overview. I mean, what do you think about? I mean, we've seen so many. At least we have African leaders who have spent over 20, some 30 years. I mean, what do you think about such situations?
That's to me?
Yes, please.
All right. Oh, thank you so much. I think it's appalling that we have people who believe that power is their birthright, especially in a situation where the world is evolving. Even countries that practice like monarchies, such as America, such as Britain and Spain, and even Japan, they've learned to leave the political space and just maintain the traditional integrity of their country and let ordinary people do politics. I mean, that's what you have in Japan, where you have the emperor. He's just like the figure. That's, you can understand, that's monarchy. That's them trying to preserve their culture. But when you have real power and somebody is trying to sit tight, I think that's not good, and it hinders people. It hinders fresh ideas, and you can be very sure of backwardness in such societies. I know some people will want to bring about the talks of countries like Singapore, where Lee Kuan Yew stood for a while, but that's different. That's the cases. If we analyze the case, it's different. So we need to subject this years to looking at the pros and the cons. But generally, when you consider everything generally, you'll find out that it's appalling. It's much more worse in situations where leaders have stayed too long in power.
All right, very well. Abedi, let's get to hear from you first of all, before we go deep into the conversation. Let's get your own take on the issue.
Okay, thank you for having me. I think it's actually a shame that people do that. Like African leaders that are sitting tight, like you can see, it's like something that is a threat among all of them. You find out, like, when Obasanjo was in Nigeria, he never wanted to go. The other one from the Gambia, he was there for a long time and he didn't want to go again. I don't know whether it's something with the third world countries or something that is personal and people are just clinging on to it and learning from each other. As far as I'm concerned, any leader that has led for 2 terms, which is 8 years, should be able to hand over. One of the politicians said that success without a successor is useless. If you cannot trust anybody to hand over to in your country, no matter how successful you think you have been during your years, your success is not holistic, because success also means training the human capital so that at the end of the day, you see people that you can hand over, because nobody is going to live forever. So it's really a very big matter of concern that at this day and age, people are still thinking that they can hang on to power for such a long time.
All right. So let's even look at it, Victor. Let's look at it in the perspective of a system of government that you think fits, not one that was imposed by global leaders or by the world powers. Like, there was a system even before the colonial era and all of that, which brought about democracy, as a form of government. Do you think it has helped or not?
I think a lot of people will propose, would argue that democracy has been the best. In some other cases, like I've mentioned, in a place like Singapore, they will argue that, okay, what happened in Singapore? But the real truth and what we have to talk about is what brought you into power, and that is what should keep you there. You'll find out that the problem we have with these sit-tight presidents or leaders in Africa is that they are in that position as against the will of their people. In Singapore, you'll find out that, for example, Lee Kuan Yew was there with the full support. As a matter of fact, even when he had left, he was still made the minister mentor. He continued to mentor people who were there, even though he was no longer in power. So you'll find out that the only problem now is not the question of if democracy is the best practice. It's about, are you there by the will of the people? Yeah, it's not about how long you're serving, but are you there by the will of the people? What matters is, do people want you there? If people want you there, if they want you there for as long as 50 years, let there be people contesting against you and people choosing you. It will be clear that it's people who want you. I think that is clear in the case of Rwanda. You can see that in Rwanda. Yes, there are a lot of complaints here and there. It's not, I don't think any system is perfect, but we can see that a vast majority of his people want him there. Paul Kagame. So I think that is a question. It's a question of the will of the people being suppressed by these people who many times came there by the will of the people, but stayed too long outside of the will of the people. One of our neighbors there, Cameroon, you can see what he's doing.
Oh, you're talking of President Paul Biya.
Yeah, Paul Biya, yeah. You see, the guy has been there for over 30 years.
Exactly.
To go anytime soon. Now,
the
question is, do Cameroonians want him there? I don't think so.
Well, very well. He talked about people being there at times with the will of their people. But earlier on, he talked about that actually, killing ideas. If one person remains in power for so much time, the system would seem to be monotonous. It will be a single form of operation, so to speak. But do you think that is even proper if you remain in power, be it democratic or not, for one person to remain for like 30, 37 years?
I think it's not right. Any form of government that perpetuates power on the hands of any person is not good. My friends talked about if the people want you there, if the people don't want you there. We have seen that there are many types of people in this world, and there are many ways people can show that people want people. People can be purchased. People can be coerced into wanting somebody. Crowds can be rented and manipulated to, like North Korea. Do you think they want the leader there? But if you have 100 elections today, they will manipulate it the way they want to manipulate it, and he will win. That is why the people that formulated democracy and other forms of government have to make limit the amount of time people stay in office. I don't believe that staying in office for too long actually helps. In every walk of life, staying in any place for too long makes you a burden to the people. In fact, you become a burden to yourself. And for me, if I want to talk about the issue of the best form of government, I don't believe in democracy. I can understand it, but I don't believe in it. Because fundamentally, democracy is unattainable. It is idealistic. When you say government of the people, by the people, for the people, and then you come and tell me that it is a game of, and in 100, 51 is the majority. What of the other 49? Are they not among the people? So for me, the best type of government should always be a government that suits the environment Like in Nigeria, for instance, I was telling some people that democracy does not suit Nigeria, because if we are practicing like democracy in Nigeria, every time, because of the lopsidedness of the regions, there is a region that will always have a leg room above the others. So in that case, one group will always be complaining. So for me, we have to form a government that can solve our problems in Africa. I don't believe in it is done this way in America, therefore we have to do it in Britain and we have to transport it to Nigeria. No, there is what you call adaptability. You have to adapt some certain things, and then from that you can now forge something that you can use. If anybody tells you that there is a universal way of practicing democracy, the person is lying. Our Nigerian democracy is different from democracy practiced in America. Democracy is different from the one practiced in Britain. The one they are doing in Russia, I don't know what they are doing, but they call it a democracy. And so there are many forms of democracy. But what my problem with Africans is that we learn the wrong things too quickly. We learn the wrong things too quickly. We just come and sit down and say, these people want me here, and because you can go around it. It's just like, for instance, what was happening yesterday, or day before yesterday and yesterday in Zimbabwe. You know what the president was doing? He was just buying time to see if they can call the military operation coup so that the African Union can come in and reinstate him. Do you understand? That was what he was trying to do. Because for him, he was democratically elected, even if he rigged the election. So it doesn't really mean that because he's there, people want him there. He rigged, probably, I'm not saying categorically, probably he rigged the election, and that has legitimized his stay there. And every other thing around him must follow that. So for me, people have to stick to their terms. No matter how you think people love you, there is another people, they can still love another person. And you cannot tell me, for instance, in a country of 25 million people, that you are the only person that has answered to the questions of the country. So when your term finishes, please go.
Well, talking about rigging, I think it's only the law courts that can confirm whether or not the election was rigged. However, Victor earlier was talking about sit-tight leaders who have been there and also did well for their people. He made mention of Lee Kuan Yew, who has been, or who is, a reference point to so many in universities and discourses. We also have another leader who did the same. Trying to remember his name. It just skipped my mind not too long ago. But anyways, if we have those leaders, don't you think that can happen here in Africa as well?
Yeah, I think it can. It's not limited to any continent or country. But the problem, my own concern is this. I do not believe that someone is so good that there is no person that can be as good as him. You can only know how good someone is as a president if you have tried him. If you stay with one president forever, like Singapore, is Singapore the best country in the world? No. Do you know if the man that is leading them is even drawing them back? There is a possibility that there is someone that is better than him. But you can only know that he is better than him when he is given the chance to show what he can do. But if you say, because this man is good, he has to stay and we must follow what he's doing. Do you know what they are trying to tell us? That they have submitted all their wills to the whims of one man. No man knows everything. And this man must be, all the things he's doing, they must be done being the tinted glass of his own mind, his own preferences. So let them try another person. If the person does not do well, and if they have gone around the whole country and have seen that it is impossible to get someone to match what this man is doing, they can come back to me and say, yes, this is the only person we can get. No matter how good you are, I don't believe that there is nobody that is equally as good as you are. And if they get someone that is equally as good as they are, they may give them another flavor in leadership. It's just like football. You have a manager that wins Champions League. He wins it defending. You can get another manager that can bring flair and kids into the game, and still he'll be winning the Champions League. In this way, you gain entertainment and you gain also the progression from your youth team. But this one is using already made players, and he is still doing the same thing. But he is actually stunting the growth of your youth setup. So for me, it's, if someone is good, he's good, but other people can be equally good.
Hey, all right, very well, Victor. Let me come back to you again. The person I was trying to mention is Fidel Castro. He also was there for a while, and he actually, well, from what we've been reading and hearing, and then he has passed on power to his younger brother Raul. I think, if you ask me, I think he's still in power. So back to the question, can that be replicated back here in Africa, having people who stay long still do what people like you've mentioned, Lee Kuan, Fidel Castro do?
Well, I think when you look at Fidel Castro and Lee Kuan Yew, the situation around their stay were very different, and I mean it was quite idiosyncratic to them. This was a Singaporean situation, and this was a Cuban situation. Okay, in Singapore, they were expelled from the Malaysian Union. And why? They had the same problem that Nigeria has today, the problem of value systems. They were the dirtiest, the ones who does not remit anything. They were always fighting. There was always bloodshed. And those guys simply got tired of them. And they were expelled. So someone had to take charge. And there had to be some kind of new indoctrination. And that was what necessitated his own stay, because it was his coming on board that began to introduce those new value systems. And you see that that's the same thing Nigeria suffers from today. However, Nigeria has not been expelled from anywhere. So it means that Nigeria's situation is quite different. We don't need a sit-tight leader. We just need to change our value systems, and we will be just, for example, like the UK. You see how they change prime minister any day. Anybody can just come from anywhere. But the only problem we've had is like Nigeria is like a bowl where you have so many balls. And those balls are of different colors. They should be of different colors. But in this case now, you have black. Everything was black. So no matter what, when you put your hand inside that bowl and you pick out a ball, no matter the ball you pick out, it's going to be black. If you are now lucky and you're able to pick one white ball, and when eventually that white ball goes, what is left? You put your hand again, you pick out a black ball. That is what is wrong with us fundamentally in Nigeria. So if we begin to change our value system as a people, and everybody is white now, it will not matter who is coming on board. So that is why what we need to address in Nigeria is different from what Malaysia and Singapore had to address. Now in Cuba, they had a different problem. The problem was imperialism. Yes, maybe there's a micro trace of imperialism in Nigeria, but it's not as pronounced as it was in Cuba. They had to fight to defend themselves. And so the US was always coming to interfere. And this guy is saying, no, we have to defend our national unity. I mean, that's the term we now know as nationalism, and there are different forms of that. But their cases were different, and what necessitated that. And in fact, there's a large group of the population that does not even want that. They don't like that. So does that mean that we should copy, like my brother said earlier? We don't just copy practices. We need to look at ourselves and see what is suitable for us. And Nigeria, as divergent as we are, in Cuba, they speak their Afro-Latin, Latin America, they speak Latino, they speak Spanish. They have, their languages are not as diverse as ours. But in Nigeria, for example, you have more than 350 languages. How do you manage that? So you find out that if power stays in one place, there is always going to be the feeling that of seclusion, the feeling of marginalization by other groups. And you can see that that's one of the things that the Igbos are saying. I mean the IPOB people, because that's what they are laying claim to. So we cannot afford to have a sit-tight president, for example, in the situation in our situation in Nigeria. What we need as a nation is a change of orientation, a change of value system. And when we do that, it will not matter who is the president, because you would know that the value systems are right in that person and whoever will be coming after it.
All right, very well. So just in wrapping up now, I mean, like you said earlier, and you said it has its pros and its cons. So let's begin with the pros.
Okay, the pros for a sit-tight president.
Yes, please.
Or let me use long serving in this term.
Okay.
Now, the pro would come with a condition. The condition has to be that, number one, the country has the right value system, or at least the leader has the right value system, and is dragging them in line with the value system of the country. Now, in that case, then you can have somebody who is working on a template that the country has agreed upon, and they want him there. Now, with that, you can have the longevity we assure you of policies, that the policies would endure, and the vision will be kept to. You can be sure that as long as this person, we are always going to go in this direction. And you can see that, for example, in Cuba. Cuba has the highest literacy rate in the world. And if not for, in fact, Zimbabwe, in fact, I would think one of their woes is economic sabotage, because the economy of Zimbabwe was sabotaged. But if you look at, for example, the educational policies in Zimbabwe has over 90% literacy rate. You can imagine that's just one pro. But that should come with the condition that the people still want you to be there. If the people don't want you to be there and you subvert their will, that's dictatorship. That's dictatorship. And the cons is, one of the first cons is that every sit-tight has the tendency to lead to dictatorship. And we have a lot of that around us in Africa today. Dictatorship, where the will of the people is never respected. 2, corruption. Corruption will come in because there's nobody to check you. Now you know you are going to serve forever. Who is there to challenge you? So 3, together with corruption, you have nepotism of every kind. There will now be classism. Classism will be the definition of, will be the order of the day in such a nation. And I mean, you can find that Nigeria has a history of that, especially coming from the military days. And it seems as though we've not been able to check that out of our DNA, where you have to know somebody to be somebody. Now, if you are president for a long time, people will always want to know you. They necessarily will not need to know things to make them qualify for whatever they desire. You can find that, for example, in Angola, where the said richest woman in Africa was the daughter of the former president, Dos Santos. How did she acquire wealth? And today I was speaking with an Angolan, and I mean, the situation is horrible to a point that they did not even have medical facilities or drugs at a point in that country. So I think those are the few cons, to name a few, and let my other panelists have some things to say about that.
All right, very well. Bede, for you, what will be the pros in wrapping up now?
The pros of
like the advantages
of having a long-serving leader.
Yeah, I mean, because they say whatever has disadvantages also has advantages.
The advantages or the disadvantages?
Advantages.
So, to be honest with you, I don't really have any clear-cut advantage of having a long-serving leader. To be honest, yeah. The other thing is that you can have stability if the person is good, and you can have sustained chaos if the person is not good. And there is this thing we call groupthink. When you have a leader that has been there too much for too long, he will indoctrinate everybody in the country. The whole country will start thinking like him. And when everybody starts thinking the same way, they will start making mistakes without knowing it. That is why always you need to rejig the standard every time in order to get out the things that are becoming moribund and becoming not necessary anymore. So if a leader stays for so long, no matter how good you think the person is, or how good or how promising he may be, every merit in some way turns into demerits. And if you come to demerits of long leadership, he has already given a host of them. But I'll add that it just stifles everything in the country. It makes people not to be ambitious anymore. Like in Zimbabwe, I tell you the truth, there are many people that would have been saying, I want to be governor, I want to be president, but looking at Mugabe and what they are doing. And let me tell you, this Zimbabwe situation is a peculiar situation. The ZANU-PF, that is the party, they were actually the people keeping this man in power for a long time. So you find out that because he has a lot of people there, they can actually manipulate their way into renewing his tenancy in the government house. So if that happens, you find out that this guy, whether you are good or not, these people are now thinking like him. And anybody that is not thinking the way they are thinking gets kicked out. And what brought about his downfall? Because they went against the script. The wife wanted to take over, and Mangawa, the deputy, was sacked. And now there was a strife within the group. And that is the only way they could come up with this, what I call it, a palace key or change of government. And everybody feels it's good, at least a breath of fresh air. So when a leader stays so long, he becomes a burden to his people. There are many demerits you can get from nepotism, favoritism, cliquism. They form a cabal around him, and everything will just go the other way. And if he's there, his enemies will suffer for so long, and his good friends will enjoy for too long. That is what I have to say.
All right. Very well. Thank you, Bede, for making that contribution. But just about when we're going to wrap this conversation. Okay, joins us. Okay, I believe is here in Nigeria. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for joining us. All right. He can't. I don't think he can hear me at the moment. But then, well, that's where we have to wrap the conversation. At the moment, Bede, thanks for joining us. You joined us from the UK. Where in the UK are you?
I'm in Hatfield at the moment.
Okay.
Just somewhere outside London.
Oh, great. Thanks for joining us on the program today.
It's my pleasure.
Of course, Bamushaya Victor joins us from Lviv in Ukraine. Did I get that right?
Kyiv. I'm now in Kyiv.
Oh, Kyiv. Okay. Yeah. All right, very well. You moved to the capital.
Yeah.
I guess that's where the mega box is. Very well. Make that and come back to Nigeria and spend it. Thank you very much also for joining us on the program. But just before we go, let me take a look at comments on the YouTube stream. Clara Vandeguma says, I think African leaders desire to hold on to power because they fail to distinguish between heading a democratic political position and monarchy. For them, they are the same. And Ahoma Kanu says, Sit-Side African leaders need to be removed by any means necessary because they make a mess of democracy. Well, Dennis Rose says, she's proud of you for taking on dictators. But then that's all we can take. Guys, thank you once again for joining us today on the program. For those of you watching on our YouTube stream, we do see all of you as well. Thanks for joining us from wherever you were joining from around the world. But then it's a wrap, and I'm Victor Matthias.
Thank you very much.